If humans' average lifespan was 1,000 years, what jobs and businesses would there be that we don't have now? Personal historian. That's kind of the plot to K.S. Robinson's Icehenge. People live to be 600 or 100 years old. However, their memory is that of a normal human lifespan, like 80 years. So archaeologists and historians investigate events of the past only to realize that they lived through those events. I wonder what this ancient chest could be. Oh crap, it's my old toy box. Thanks for the recommendation. Multi-century investment schemes. Imagine investing in a moon base in 2100, then retiring to your moon mansion in 3000 because you're getting up there in years and your bones can't handle normal gravity all that well. Or investing in a Dyson swarm because the ROI would be insane and you could spare a few centuries to wait for your investment to mature. Retirement on the moon sounds fun. Depends on how progressed the colony is. If it has a functional ecosystem/economy/actual food, then it's fine. If not, you're going to be eating a lot of nutrition cubes. Edit. Clarification. If it has a functional what? Anything really. A functional everything, I'd hope. 1 GB/1 GB fiber or I'm out. I hope you mean yottabyte. By the year 3000, if we aren't all dead, so much uncompressed data will be flowing. You'll want the yottabyte. I'm a simple man, with simple needs. I guess ecosystem. But the smell. Emphasis on schemes because people would easily fall for futuristic predictions. People in the 50s were sure we'd have flying cars by now. People are mentioning helicopters, but genuine flying cars do exist, many types of them. Including one that's legit just a car but with 4 jet engines instead of wheels. The problem is they're all horrifically dangerous and not legal for use in public space. They're also wildly inefficient fuel-wise. The problem is they're all horrifically dangerous and not legal for use in public space. And they won't be. People can barely drive on the streets, you'd never let them drive flying cars. The only way you ever get flying cars is if they are operated by machines only. And people in the 50s thought we would have electronics everywhere. Instant video communication is easily accessible as the telephone, and the ability to control factory equipment from your home office, or a whole encyclopedia that could fit in the palm of your hand. We have all of those things. Sometimes predicting the future gets it very, very right. If you shotgun blast 50,000 darts at a wall, a few of them are going to hit the board. I don't know, but companies would be like, you need 200 years of experience. Can you imagine having to work an entry-level job for 50 years? I think what would be considered entry-level would change and the amount of time people were willing to spend training would increase dramatically. People would focus on self-improvement more. If you were going to live to 1,000, spending 100 years in full-time education is not a terrible idea. People we think of as at the top of their field would be total noobs compared to people living 1,000 years. Think you are good at something now? Imagine spending a couple of 100 years practicing. You're right, but I was talking more about having to work 50 years doing unrewarding work like filling shelves in the supermarket. Unrewarding, customers treat you like crap all the time, little to no breaks. So like how things are now? For real, this is what it's like for many people. It reminds me of my aunt that is retiring soon. She's mostly been a cashier/clerk her whole life. Not necessarily true. Doctors, for instance, lose efficacy over time because they have outdated information that they don't always keep up with, although they should. Same for stuff like mechanics. I mean, the age of personal computing would be our 100-year equivalent of 4 years old. The internet is 2. 3 if you count the niche days. There would be a lot of retraining or stagnation. Doctors are such a mixed bag, as are all people, I guess. I know plenty of elderly doctors who pushed themselves to become adept at using computers in the late 90s/early 2000s and are just as proficient as anyone else is. I met a doctor in her 50s last week that was struggling to use her MacBook. Riot Games would be thrilled. 2,000 years of game experience. I think continuous education would be sufficiently more important. Think of how people over 70 struggle to keep up with modern computers. Now imagine more than half of adults were born before the modern concept of democracy. Good Lord, imagine what the Supreme Court would look like. They would all be 900+ years old. When 900 years old you reach, look this good you will not. I'd say school until you're 16, work until you're 50, school from 50 to 66, work from 66 to 106, just keep rinse and repeating. It's the only way. I feel like when you are in your last 100 years you could probably stop with that crap. If we live for 1,000 years there's no way people will be considered old enough to work at 16. Depends on the content of life at that point. If we are basing it on how we've evolved currently, and if we said that the average age people lived until was 100, then the person would still be a baby. The concept of teenager wouldn't apply in the same way because it would last a lot longer, nothing would be the same. I'm just offering a generalized take on it. But let's just say you start school at age 50 when you look like a 5-year-old and finish at 180 years old when you look like what would be a teenager but would probably be called the center or some crap. The primary issue to me seems that time would move at the same speed technically, but I think if we live that long that maybe our concept of time altogether would be altered, and 1,000 years would probably feel the same as 100 years does now. As in you reach maturity at the same time but just stay at your peak of 2030 for 900 years then drop off from there. Yeah, I'd effing hate just scaling everything up by 10. I'd love to be 15/16 for another 18 years, to be honest. I'm about to be 21, but once I have that birthday y'all can hit pause. Imagine the holiday presents you'd have to buy for your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-ex and grandparents. Yeah. We would do away with that bull crap, laughing out loud. My vote is for working September through May and then have summer school every year. Not everyone could do that. Someone has to keep the lights on. It would probably be the better route, just have shifts. Some people do school June to August, some September to November, some December to February, and some March to May. Probably if you are going every year 1 month, a year would be plenty. That when the other hemisphere is responsible for keeping the lights on. Just go by seasons more than months. Ah. Imitating Yoda you are, Imposter, he is. Agree with you, I must. I sentence you to crucifixion. I'm pretty sure any position where you're chosen for life would be removed/replaced. It's already archaic if you ask me. It's anti-democratic for people to be given such an important position for life, in my opinion. Yes and no. I completely see why you would think that, but for life appointments to the Supreme Court exist to stop each successive government from simply throwing out the opposition and getting in a load yes men. A better solution off the top of my head would be to have the Supreme Court be elected from within the lower courts. The POTUS and Senate electing their own oversight is the real problem. How about replacing life tenure with just a very long term, say 20 years? Most justices are appointed in their 40s, 50s, so by the time their term ends they'd be retirement age. You then create the same incentive problems congressmen have, that they need to provide for what happens when they get out of office. The idea is that those justices cannot and should not be swayed by a change in the winds of politics or considering their own interests when they leave office. Certainly could be better. I don't disagree that judges in their 80+ are likely to be more disjointed from the concerns of a much younger population. Not for that position. When you don't have to care about getting elected/keeping office, you truly don't have to care about how politics affect you. As a whole, the Supreme Court has accomplished a lot this way over the last 200 years. Prevents them from being controlled by political parties/the president. Which is ironic, given that once they're placed in office, they can give the bird to the people that nominated them, laughing out loud. I wonder though if technology would develop as fast as it currently does if people live for 1,000 years. Possibly faster. If talented scientists wouldn't have around 50 years to include themselves but 500, it would massively help science. I thought science advances one death at a time. The old guard holds onto old concepts and blocks the new ideas that usurp their authority. I think part of that is due to tenure. Basically, some % of the old guard gets lazy after a while, gets too high and mighty on their own success and stops putting in the work required to stay both on the cutting edge and grounded. I've seen it go both ways. Some reject the new science because they don't understand it, but some also go maverick and embrace woo. At my school, in materials science, one of the 4 old elite professors got into trying to prove homeopathy was real. And at some age, cognitive decline and creeping dementia becomes a real problem, too. Depends on how the human mind and body ages in this hypothetical 1,000-year lifespan. If it's just 10 times slower than a 100-year lifespan, then I guess they can still learn effectively up until 700 years old. Maybe degrees will have a 100-year validity period where you have to retake the course every 100 years to show that you are up to speed with the current knowledge base. Imagine having to relearn things that you already learned about 400 years ago. If I have already lost my keys enough times, that would be the end of me. Suicide would be a big challenge, I think. People keep mentioning alternating working and going to school for hundreds of years, 2 of my least favorite things of all time. I definitely off myself after about 350. Mental capacity notwithstanding, go look up what some 100-year-olds look like. Now extrapolate that to a 1,000-year-old. These withered, raisin-husk 1,000-year-old politicians are going to make Biden and Trump look like toddlers by comparison. My assumption would be the physical age is at 1/10 the speed as well. I remember when they first invented chocolate. Now imagine more than half of adults were born before the modern concept of democracy. Democratic absolutism. 500-year mortgages, I guess houses would have to be made out of superwood or something. Longevity for everything would have to be better, so all our materials would have to be stronger. The mortgage would be for the land, not the house itself. Or for the body. Was just thinking of repo men. If you fail to pay off, they take your kidney. Building wooden structures that last 500 years wasn't even out of the question 500 years ago. You have to keep up maintenance. Web link. Exactly. My uncle's house was built in 1650, and it's still stable and good to live in. As an American who grew up and still lives in the Pacific Northwest, that is crazy to me. A fair amount of 17th century homes still exist in the Northeast US. A ton from the 18th century. It's pre-1600 houses from Europe that are still used that are more exceptional in my opinion. Yeah, totally. I've been to the East Coast and it's always just crazy to me seeing history that's more than 120 years old, haha. There's a saying, Americans think 100 years is a long time. Europeans think 100 miles is a long distance. I have never heard that before, but I love it. Is this comment too American for me to understand? There are multiple buildings within walking distance for me that are over 500 years old. I doubt longevity would increase. Just think of how many more times they can sell the same crap to you because the old one broke. I can't imagine capitalism in its current state would exist at all if everyone lived for 1,000 years. The political/social/economic climate would probably be unimaginably different. The fact that this is an honest answer is so disturbing. I think population control would be a stated and accepted goal of every government, and there would be a massive state apparatus for determining who gets to have children and when. It would have to be. Imagine if the people born right after the Battle of Hastings were still alive, consuming resources. You couldn't let everyone breed at will. It would be every issue the modern world has with overpopulation, urban sprawl, and pollution, but in overdrive. It depends on whether people remained fertile for much of their 1,000 years or not. The title question just talks about the human lifespan, not about when menopause starts, and men don't stop being fertile in such a relatively sudden way, but their fertility steadily decreases with age anyway. If fertility remained as is, I could imagine humans not being considered fully adult until their first century or so. There would be a relatively small population of fertile individuals, tasked with little but reproduction and learning, and a much larger population of infertile individuals who mostly take care of the practicalities of keeping society running, sort of like you social insects, except not really. Come to think of it, it could be a good premise for a kind of perky sci-fi story. If we lived for a longer time, we'd probably default biologically to having children at a much lower rate, and take longer to gestate. Pregnancy would not be most of a year, it would be most of a decade. Yikes. 10.246 years. I did the math. But are you going to show the math? According to my source, life expectancy at birth is 73.2 years. Assuming the biological aging is adjusted such that your biological age will be 73.2 years when you are 1,000 real years old, so if you divide the real years aged by the biological years aged, 1,000, 73.2, you find that you will biologically age 1 year every 13.6 real years. Times that by 3/4 THS, 9 months, and you find that average total gestation would be 10.246 years, arbitrarily rounded. Nice. r/they did the math. Reddit link. Shivers and taco phobia, oh dear lord no. What a nightmare. Pregnancy itself would remain the same, as that is more a factor of size. What will change is fertility. It will become exceedingly difficult to get pregnant. I'm pretty sure if humans had always lived 1,000 years, civilization would have adapted to that as well. That would be a good AskReddit. I think population control would be a stated and accepted goal of every government, and there would be a massive state apparatus for determining who gets to have children and when. Like a lottery. I've seen that movie somewhere. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.